So Moses was the agent of God to take us out of Egypt. Okay? Now, we're commanded on Passover Eve, means the first day of the 7 days of Passover, and outside of Israel it's 8 days, also something I can't go into, but there's 7 days of Passover biblically, and where the first night we have to perform several biblical commandments. One of those biblical commandments is to retell the story of our redemption from slavery in Egypt. Okay? Okay. So, I'm going to ask a question now. So we're obligated, God told us we have to tell the story of our redemption from slavery. Is that correct? That's one of the commands, right? So, if we ask any even yeshiva student, I'm talking about postgraduate. So what do we do Passover Eve? Magid, we tell the story of our redemption. We tell the story that we left Egypt. So I will tell him. Anyone want to ask any questions on this? So this is the book that the rabbis formulated to retell the story of the Exodus, okay? Has a certain text. We're not obligated to use this text necessarily. But there are certain components of the text that we are obligated to have, which I may get into a little bit later. But this text is very problematic. Why is it problematic? Does not tell the story of our exodus from Egypt. It is. Are you a lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. You're also a lawyer. Mm-hmm. It is disjointed. It's a disjointed, unorganized, seemingly disjointed, seemingly unorganized group of paragraphs that, in Yiddish, we'd say kleppen sich nit eine zu der zweite. There's no glue that holds one to the other. Yeah. And this is what the rabbis came up with.
What was that written, Rabbi? The Haggadah?
This was written, the text was formalized over a period of several hundred years, from, let's say, 2,000 years ago through, let's say, 1,500 years ago. No, way after the Anshe Knesset Gedolah. Way after Anshe Knesset Gedolah. You have Rabbi Akiva, Rav Tarfon, Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, Ben Zoma. Those are Tanaic figures who lived 2,000 years ago. Right? So with Anshe Knesset Gedolah, we're talking about 2,500 years ago. So you understand very well that the rabbis knew what they were doing. Right. The rabbis knew what they were doing. So how could they come up with such a interesting, disjointed, disorganized piece of literature? It's a good question?
It was a very, very good question.
Okay. And you have a rabbi who was asking this question. So the answer is because you don't know the formula that's necessary to understand the absolutely brilliant formulation of the Haggadah. Absolutely brilliant formulation. Now, I've spent a few years on the Haggadah, maybe 3 or 4 decades working on it, right? So I could tell you this formulation, and I could argue it in front of anyone in the entire world. And not only that, but they would love it because it actually works for everything, and it's very, very simple. Okay? Now, before we start, I have to get now. I'm terrible. What is your first name again?
Daniel.
Daniel. I apologize. I have a very small head, and okay. So I don't remember names that well. So, Daniel, you hear the question I'm asking. You're not familiar with the Haggadah, right?
No.
But this lady is apparently, because she feels that it is very disjointed, right? But I'm going to explain that it is absolute brilliance, okay? Absolute brilliance.
You're talking about any text or just this one that you're holding in your hand?
No.
This book. Or you're taking
No,
any book?
You're talking about the Talmud, let's say?
No,
Or
I'm
the
talking
Chumash?
about
Of the
Haggadah.
Haggadah.
I'm only
They're all
talking about
the-
Haggadah.
Haggadah.
I'm talking about the entire Haggadah is absolutely brilliantly formulated. And I'll explain to you the
They're pretty much
formula.
all the same. Meaning there might
Yeah,
be
some
slight
books are.
variation.
No, but the text, we're talking about the text. The commentary, forget about. Talking about the pure text, it's all the same, almost word for word.
Yeah.
I read it in English, so I don't know what this part says.
Okay, so no, it's all the same as, you know.
It might be small variations.
There's tiny variations, but they're all basically all Ashkenaz is the same, almost all Sfarad is the same, you know. But it's the same. Maimonides has a text in his main work, and it's almost word for word the text we have. And of course, he's Sephardic, so it's really you know throughout this is the text. So let me explain to you. We're told, please look at page 2, where you have the bottom, Maimonides, Yad HaChazaka, Laws of Chametz and Matzah.
Chapter 7.
Do you have that? Okay. So Maimonides, he's one of the most brilliant scholars after the redaction of the Talmud, and he lived approximately 800 plus years ago. And he took the entire Talmud, which is the oral tradition, and he distilled it and organized it. It was just unbelievable that a human being could do that. It is unbelievable. So he says as follows: it is a positive commandment of the Torah. Does everyone have that section 1? It is a positive commandment of the Torah to relate the miracles and wonders that occurred to our ancestors in Egypt on the night of the 15th of Nisan. Daniel, what is Nisan? Rhetorical question. Nisan is one of the months of the Jewish year. The name is not, Nisan is not a Hebrew word, it's a Babylonian word. When we went into exile, we picked up the names of the months from Babylonian. So we refer to them as Nisan. The Torah calls it by numbers. Nisan is the first month of the year. Okay, so on the 15th of the month of Nisan, which is coming up in less than 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks from now, exactly. So we're going to sit at the Seder, and we're going to fulfill a positive commandment of the Torah to relate the miracles and wonders that occurred to our ancestors on the night of the 15th of Nisan. As it says, remember this day as the time you left Egypt. That's a verse. So he's bringing that as a source. That's, remember this day as the time you left Egypt. In the same way as it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Okay, I don't want to get too complicated. We don't know what that means. That's not for this class. I wrote about that. And how do we know that this is the night of the 15th? It is derived from what is said, and you shall tell your child on that day, it is because of this, implying that it is the time when the Passover offering, the unleavened bread, and the bitter herb are set up before you. Most of the people in this room are half are probably lawyers, so I'm going to ask a simple question. You're supposed to be able to write and take apart text, okay? This is not a challenge, but of course it is. But let me just ask: how do you understand these few lines? He said before in the first and second line that it's a positive commandment to relate the miracles and wonders that occurred to our ancestors in Egypt on the night of the 15th of Nisan. So it tells us what? That on the 15th of Nisan, we have to relate the miracles and wonders that happened when we were redeemed from Egypt, right? So what is the next paragraph? And how do we know that it is on this night of the 15th?
How?
We just said how. You said it before. You just said it. On the night of the 15th, as it says, remember this day as the time you left Egypt. When did you leave Egypt? On the 15th of Nisan. That happens to be a fact. So why does he have to now say And how do we know that it's on this night of the 15th? It is derived from when it says, and you shall tell your child on that day, it is because of this, implying that it is at the time when the Passover offering, the unleavened bread and the bitter herbs are set up before you, which is told us that we must eat it we must eat the matzah and the bitter herbs and the Paschal lamb. We have to eat it on the 15th of Nisan. So why, my dear friends, does he repeat himself and he brings two different sources? You understand the question?
Yeah.
Do we understand the question?
Yes.
Please.
I was going to try answering the question.
Whoa, okay. Let's see. Daniel?
He implies that you need to pass it down orally, and but the only way you'll know...
One second. He doesn't pass it down orally. No, one second. He says you have to remember it. It doesn't yet say, number one...
tell your child.
That's the second verse, correct? So what do you want to say?
So I'm saying is the way you remember it, the way you know it's that day, is by telling your child it's that day when it is that day. So every single year, if you tell your child, you're passing it down orally. Thereby, you know that it's that day.
Okay. So let's see. So why does he need the first? Why does he need the first paragraph altogether? The proof from remember this day is the day you left Egypt.
I mean, to know what to relate to your child. If you don't remember what the day is and what's the significance.
No, so it says. Remember,
right.
The second one says, and you shall, and you should tell your child on that day. It is because of this.
Right, and this is remember this day as the time you left Egypt. So if you remember that this is.
So what are we supposed to remember?
That this is the day you left Egypt, and that you need to remember to tell that your child that today is that day.
I just want to say, Daniel just cut the Gordian knot. What do you say?
I don't know what a Gordian knot is.
So you have to know some history. They say that Alexander the Great once came. There was a great ball that was all knotted up, and there was I don't know the exact. Certainly don't remember the exact thing, but they said whoever could untie all these knots. So I don't know what, but Alexander the Great said, obviously no one could untie it, so he took a huge sword, and he just cut the entire ball in half. There's always you just cut to the chase. You said it, but let me say, but you don't. But Daniel, let me say, you do not know what you're talking about, but you said exactly the correct thing. You said exactly the correct thing, and let me tell you this. So let me just tell you what you said. Reb Chaim Brisker says. Reb Chaim Brisker says. So you don't know who Reb Chaim Brisker is, but if you knew who Reb Chaim Brisker was, you would be very, very happy. You would be very happy. Okay, excellent. Excellent. There are two things my man is telling you. We're getting to the formula. You're worried about the formula. Every year you go, what are you saying? It makes no sense, no organization. So I'm going to tell you it's brilliantly organized. So let me tell you. There are two things that my man is telling us here. In the first paragraph, he's not telling us when to say the Haggadah. But as you said, he's telling us what to say. But you didn't even know what you're saying, but you said very, very well. You said very well. The what is something that we have to know, because that's what you want to know. What are we talking about? That's the organization. What's the content? Right. The substance of what we have to say. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me just throw out for 1 second. Oh, well, you have to tell the story. So, of course, you're going to talk about Joseph and his brothers. You don't know this because you have to learn Torah. So we have to learn together. We have to learn together. We have to be learned. We have to be literate Jews. And Brian, I would start up with you, but Daniel can take it more. So I'm giving it there, but he's okay. So we have to tell the story of Joseph and his brothers because that's how they got down to Egypt. If you know the storylines in the Bible, right? And we're certainly going to talk about Moses, right? Because Moses did all the deal. He was the agent of God. Do we mention Moses in this book, the Haggadah? Do we mention Moses? Yes or no? No, we don't say one word. His name is mentioned, but parenthetically, nothing to do with the story of him leading the people. Nothing. So he's not mentioned in Haggadah. How can you tell over the story, the substance of the story of going out of Egypt, and not mention Moses? And if you think you know what you're doing, that you're telling the story from being 10, you're just fooling yourself. You're a liar. Because we don't do that in this Haggadah. You understand me? We don't mention Moses. Do we mention the 10 plagues? So someone will say, we don't mention, we mention the names. And Rabbi Yehuda, he didn't even want to mention the names. He said that Tzachadash Bachav, he had an acronym that he mentioned. Remember the acronym? The Tzachadash Bachav. Okay, you got to learn some Hebrew because then you'll remember the Hebrews that the Tzachadash Bachav. So then, I tell you this. When I see you smile, it brings me tremendous pleasure. Okay. So we don't mention the 10 plagues that God gave. We don't that demoralized, destroyed the civilization of Egypt before the Jews went out. And then we don't mention Moses. Oh my gosh, no one's going to fool me and say we're telling the story of the Exodus. And we don't mention Joseph and his brothers. That's how they got down to Egypt in the first place. That whole story we don't mention. So what do we mention? What do we mention?
That you left.
So we mention that we left, but when do we say that that we've taken out of Egypt? So we don't talk too much about that until the end. Until toward the end, I would say 3/4 the way in, or 2/3 the way in, we talk about 4 verses from the book of Deuteronomy. That's way after the second book. That's the 5th book, the final book of the Bible. So we take 4 verses that seemingly have as much to do with the story as who knows what. We do mention going out of Egypt there. But the rabbis take that verse and take the 4 verses that are in the written Bible. And you know that with the written Bible was accompanied when we were given the Bible at Mount Sinai. So we were not only given the written, we also given the oral interpretation. Without that, you can't learn. There's no Judaism without the oral interpretation, because then it's just like the Christians. The Christians have the written word, but they have no tradition whatsoever. They have nothing. So we have the written word, and we have the oral interpretation. So the oral interpretation is what we do here on those 4 verses, 2/3 of the way in. But what are we telling the story of? Now I have to get to the bottom line, because you'll say, okay, I came in, I asked a few good questions, I was pretty honest to questions, I raised my voice, I got excited, excitement, but what did I come up with? What the answer is, my dear friends, that my man is now read it again. It is a positive command of the Torah to relate the miracles and wonders that occurred to our ancestors on the night of the 15th of Nisan. That's not saying that we should tell it on the night of the 15th of Nisan. That's telling us we say over what happened on the night of 15th of Nisan, back then in Egypt. Do you hear me? And that's really what we do, because we certainly don't tell the story. No one will say this is absurd. We don't tell the story of our sojourn down to Egypt and being enslaved there, and Moses. We don't touch it one word. What do we say? The main thing that the rabbis, the oral tradition tells us, tell the story of what happened on the 15th of Nisan at night. What happened? Moses had nothing to do with that. That 10th plague. What was the 10th plague? So you don't know what the 10th plague is. So we're going to learn a lot. We have to learn a lot.
The firstborn.
Now we're talking. This woman knows. It's the
killing of the firstborn.
The killing of the firstborn. What was the killing of the firstborn? What was the abstract? What does it mean, the killing of the firstborn? What was and actually that was done. What do I have the Haggadah translated here, and please look at the bottom of page 4. Bottom page 4. This is the 4th verse of those 4 verses that I was talking about, and I'm going to say a Hebrew word, Arami Ovidovi. That's what we refer to it. Arami Ovidovi. Doesn't matter what that means. But the 4th verse, you hear it? You see it at the bottom of page 4. The Lord took us out of Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, and with great manifestations. and with signs and with wonders. The Lord took us out of Egypt. Now this is the back and forth. This you have to, Daniel. It's very important that you go through because this is the first time you're going to be going through the oral tradition. This is what we call biblical exegesis. Biblical exegesis. The Lord took us out of Egypt, not through an angel, not through a seraph, and not through a messenger. Forget Moses. He's a messenger. It has nothing to do with taking us out of Egypt. This is what happened on the 15th at night back there, 3,300 years ago. The Holy One, blessed be He, did it in His glory by Himself. Thus it is said, in that night I will pass through the land of Egypt, and I will smite every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from man to beast, and I will carry out judgments against all the gods of Egypt. I, the Lord, I will pass through the land of Egypt, I am not an angel, and I will smite every firstborn in the land of Egypt, I not a seraph, and I will carry out judgments against all the gods of Egypt, I am not a messenger, I, the Lord, it is I and no other. Let's see what time it is.
What was your answer, Rabbi?
We didn't give an answer yet.
No.
We have very little time.
Hold on.
What? 15 minutes.
You're saying it's based on where Maimonides says on the night of the 15th of Nisan. That's what you have to relate.
You have to relate what happened that night. Okay?
And he's getting that from...
Not going... No.
He's getting that from where...
This verse... No, this is not Maimonides. This is the translation of the Haggadah.
He's getting that from the verse in the Torah that says, remember this day you left Egypt?
That's correct.
Where's he getting on the 15th night of Nisan from remember this day?
No, remember this day. Which day? That's what Daniel said. Which day?
Yeah.
The 15th of Nisan. That one day.
It's like excellent.
Remember that one day. He's telling you what to remember. That's the substance of what to remember. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. You should know. Daniel got it. It's beginner's luck. It's beginner's luck, and many times you should know someone who hasn't gone through, like you take a piece of Talmud, you went through it 50 times, right? But someone who has going through it the first time, since he doesn't know that much about it, sometimes can come up with something that's genius. It means we should be retelling only what happened that night. And I will go. Okay, so now you have the formula. I'm giving you the formula. Daniel gave it to us. That the Maimonides says, you tell over. Anyway, first, I have this from my Rabbi, Rav Soloveitchik, who said it from his grandfather, Reb Chaim Brisker, who was the greatest Talmudist, definitely in the last, maybe arguably 150 years. The greatest Talmudist. He was a genius of geniuses, but more than that, he learned a little Torah. So this is what he said. But after I found that the Mabit, says it clearly. It doesn't matter who the Mabit was. He says it clearly. He says it open in Maimonides. That's what Maimonides means, and it makes a lot of sense. Saul, when you asked, I'm glad that you asked it, because we don't tell over the story of us going down to Egypt and what happened in Egypt all that year of when Moses was leading the Jews and bringing the 9 plagues. We only really relate what happened that night, and what do we say about that night?
Why not do more and do the prior?
Oh, excellent. Now you ask the critical question. Why is it so important only to relate that as opposed to everything else? Why is that? Now we have the second. I have to get the second part of the formula. What is the second part of the formula? Second part of the formula is that something happened that night. What happened that night? That night, God. Well, listen, what He did. Pesach. The name is Passover. So God came down Himself. Big point. He only came down Himself. What do we need to know? He came down Himself. And if He would have done it through Moses, what would have been? Only I, no one else. The answer is, you send a messenger. It says, I choose a nice. You want to give your fiance a wonderful bouquet. So you want to pick it because you find it and say, did you choose this for me? And you'll say, no, I had my secretary go down and pick one out. Doesn't sound so good, right? Of course, I went down special, I myself, and I chose it, right? What happened on the 15th night, Daniel?
Passed over.
He passed over the houses of the Jews, and he killed the Egyptian firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What did he do by that?
He destroyed any sort of future generation or
No.
arm.
No. Read the following. Read the following, and it will answer the question. All right, here we go.
Confirm that we're the chosen nation, no?
Yes. Page. I'm getting lost here myself because it's in the English. Verse 3, verse 4. So where's... look at page 5, line 4, and with great manifestation. This refers to the revelation of the Shekhinah, the divine presence, as it says. Now, this is a quote from another verse in the Bible. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Has any God ever tried to take for himself a nation from the midst of another nation? With trials, signs and wonders, with war and with strong hand, and an outstretched arm, and with great manifestations, like all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes." Meaning on that night. What does it mean, take a nation from another nation? There was a choosing.
Yeah.
There was a choosing. So what happened on the 15th at night?
Chose one nation.
He chose one nation from all other nations. Who did he choose?
Jews?
He chose Daniel.
No.
No. So guess what? Once you understand this, you understand, I'm going to give you some glimpses of why it's so brilliant. It says that we should, B'chol dor v'dor, this is in the Haggadah. Look at page 6. This straight translation from the Haggadah. In every generation, look, it's probably 3/8 of the way down on the page. In every generation, you see the bold page 6. In every generation, the person is obligated to regard himself as if he had come out of Egypt. As it says, you shall tell your child on that day, it is because of this that the Lord God did for me when I left Egypt. The Holy One, blessed be He, redeemed not only our fathers from Egypt, but He redeemed also us with them. As it says, it was with us that He brought us out from there, so that He might bring us to the land that He swore to our fathers. What does that mean? What do you mean? We're obligated to see that we, as if we went out of Egypt. It's baloney. It's baloney. It's of course, it's schizophrenic. It's schizophrenic. I think I'm one of the people delusional. I'm one of the people left Egypt. I'm not one. So what does this halacha mean? What does this verse mean? Daniel, I'm counting on you. That's what I said before. You were chosen. Is there any difference between Daniel being chosen and Moses being chosen on that night?
I mean, no.
Zero. Why? Because God said, you are my chosen people. You and everyone that came after that. If that's the formula, then I was chosen as much as Moshe Rabbeinu. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, that's what it means. You're obligated to feel that you were chosen. Just like, because that's what happened. You're obligated to feel that you were chosen. And why is it that this is the only commandment that we're obligated to tell our children? Why?
To show them that they're chosen, or to make them understand that they're chosen.
Daniel, if you know that Rav Yosef, Saul probably saw Rav Yosef. You ever saw him in Deal? Never met him?
No.
Well, he used to come to Deal. When he came to America, yeah. No, I didn't meet him either, but I afterwards I cried that I didn't meet him. So Rav Yosef. You ever hear of Rav Yosef?
No.
The man had 850,000 to 1 million Jews at his funeral. He died a year ago. You don't know who he is? Obviously, you weren't at his funeral.
The rabbi.
Oh, no, I was
Okay, so
so one of the
you didn't have to be invited. They came from everywhere. So he had a thing that you see the video of him. He had hundreds of thousands of people who adored him. And after I couldn't get enough literature about him. I read 3 books of his biography, and I kept on looking at the videos of him after he was. I'm not Sephardi, but I fell in love with him. He's the guy, and the thing that's most beautiful. He had the people who came. He knew everything by heart. He was a brilliant person. He was the greatest Sephardic rabbi of the last, probably 75 years. He used to, the thousands of people passed through him when he had these get-togethers, and everyone they kissed his hand. That's a Sephardic tradition, by the way. And then he gave a smack to every person again, like this. In Yiddish, we call it a glet. A little, but he gave it a hard smack. There was so much love and warmth in that smack. You have no idea. That's why there were almost 1 million people at his. That's not a exaggeration. They had to stop. It's all traffic in Jerusalem stopped, and the people couldn't get in. It was too crowded. They could not get into Jerusalem. There were 100,000 people on the road leading up to Jerusalem because they couldn't get in.
So anyway, what did you say? What did we start with?
I'm just saying. The reason why I mentioned him is because Daniel, you have no idea. He's very good. He's mamish. So if you were closer, I would smack you.
Oh, that's what.
It's good that you're not. It's good thing you're not closer because you're saying beautifully. You're saying no agency here. No agency. So why? Because you're saying beautifully. You're saying beautifully. You're saying beautiful. Okay.
Rabbi, so why don't we relate to
So what's back to your question? So what's the answer?
No.
Daniel, tell him the answer. Why don't we speak about the thing? Because we only want to say one idea. What's the idea we want to say? God chose us. The first 9 plagues were not to choose us. That's what the last plague of going over the symbolism in that. We believe that the Torah, every letter is holy. Every letter is actually the building blocks. The Kabbalah calls it that it's the building blocks of the universe. What it says, Histaka b'Raisa b'Alma, that God looked at the Torah, created the Torah, and that's the architectural plans by which He created the universe. So it's prime real estate. Every letter in the Torah is prime real estate, So it's talking about God jumped over and the whole. What does it mean? Stories. The answer is it's telling us that God chose us.
My question: could He have chosen someone else?
He could not have chosen someone else. You know why?
Why?
He could have chosen anyone, but
right.
You know why he couldn't choose anyone?
Yeah.
Because there's a story that you have to come back. Because if you go through to the Haggadah, probably page 5 here.
Yeah.
It says as follows. No, we're going to go back. I'm sorry. Maybe page 3. 2-minute warning. Okay, but I gave you the formula. I gave you the formula.
Down in the next room. You can go on an extra 5 minutes. Don't worry about
Okay, but maybe we wanted to break. So, and second of all, we always leave with a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
We have to leave a cliffhanger because you can't.
The other nation didn't want.
Yeah, I know.
No. You're talking about the Torah. But the choosing is as follows. Oh my gosh. Let me just get it for you here. Look at page 4, second paragraph. Blessed is he who keeps his promise to Israel.
All right.
Blessed be he, for the Holy One, blessed be he, calculated the end of the bondage in order to do as he had said to our father Abram at the covenant between the portions. As it says, and he said to Abram, you shall know that your seed will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will enslave them and make them suffer for 400 years. But I shall also judge the nation whom they shall serve, and after that they will come out with great wealth. So it was a prophecy foretelling the entire bondage and the sojourn in Egypt, and that is why Abraham was the beloved of God, because he was the first a human being that recognized God totally on his own. Okay? So he was promised that he would have children because he was childless actually till 100.
Right.
And then he was promised that his progeny would inherit the land of Israel. Okay, that's not here. That's the text of the Torah before, text of the Bible before this passage. Okay, okay. So he was told that they're going to inherit the land. So when he's told at age 70, he was 70 when this prophecy took place. He was told at age 70 you're going to have children. So listen, he'd been trying to have children for a long time. So and he didn't have any children. So he said, "Good, I'm going to have children." God says, "Fine." Then he says, "Yeah, but you should know also that your children are going to inherit the land of Israel."
Right.
So on that he says, "Okay, I need a sign. For that I need a sign." So okay, he didn't come to this company obviously to make the contract for the land, right? But what was the sign? The sign was that there was a covenant. That this is the covenant. This is a famous covenant, Bris Bein Absarim. It's all in the Bible. So this is this is the only the verses having to do with the straight covenant. So we have to understand that Abraham, that he would have a child. He didn't want a sign, but that he would that inherit the land. He needed a sign. So the answer is, my dear friends, because who inherits the land? The land, a big land. You're not a family. That's nomadic tribes. Don't they have wherever they go they have. They don't need. Who has a national homeland? A national homeland. A nation. A nation. So if we are a nation, we'll have a land. So God said. So Abraham said, "Listen, but if one of my children are not always so good, so they won't be the part of the nation. So what do we need a land for? We'll always be just a people, a family, a mishpacha." And in fact, it was that way because Abraham had a son who was not the greatest. His name was Ishmael, and he had a grandson. His name is Esav. From both of them, we suffer till today, the Jewish people, right? So, and they didn't have anything to do with inheriting the land, although the Ishmaelites, they want them. They definitely want to get the land. But the bottom line is that they don't have any share in the land. So he says, if only the saintly among my progeny will inherit the land, so we don't need a land. How many are there going to be? Not going to be that many. So he said, "No, I want a nation that even the sinners will have a chance at that living in that nation." So God said, "Oh, you want a nation? I'm telling you, and what I'm telling you is gold. You're not going to hear this anyplace else. You don't realize, but you're not going to hear it anyplace else." So he said, God said, "Oh, you want a nation? For a nation, so I have to forge the nation. I have to create a nation. I have to create the DNA of a nation that even if they themselves will be sinners, but we know that they have the potential to carry on the Jewish genes of Rachmanim, of compassionate people, Baishanim, modest people, V'gomli Chasodim, and doing good deeds. And part of that is loving every other Jew. So God said, for that, I need to have a process. The process is that I have to make that we have to all go down to Egypt, and you'll all be slaves, and that will make you all one. A slave. There's no. This was, and there's a verse in the Bible actually it says this, but of course it doesn't explain it. It says that Egypt was the crucible. What was the crucible? They were over there for the Zohar. They actually worshipped the idols just like the Egyptians at the end. So what was the big crucible? What crucible was to refine? A refining. It's something to melt metal and to refine it. That the dross goes away from the actual pure metal. So what happened? They were in a very low level actually. But they said what I told you before. They had achieved this element of Rachmanim, Baishanim, Gomi, Chasodim, and loving each other. That I have absolute proof for. So this is the story. This is the story, my dear friends. We'll stop here. But Saul, you have it?
Yeah.
Why
Okay.
not mention Moshe? What'd you say about
No, because Moshe was not part of that choosing.
No.
Choosing. That's the only thing we want to give over. The only message we want to give over is that God chose us. That's what we want to give over to our
No, but
children.
he was involved in the 15th of Nisan?
No, he was not.
Not at all?
Zero. It says it very clearly. Ani v'lo malach. God said, I am not an angel. Ani lo soraf. I am not a soraf. Ani v'lo ashaliach. I am not an agent. There was no agency.
He wasn't involved at all that night?
So-
Not all. Not at all.
You're going to sit together after with Daniel. Guys will go.
Yeah.
Daniel straight out.
If you want.
Very good, very good. Okay, guys, have a wonderful Passover. I actually wrote a Haggadah that has all this. If you want to get a copy, I have 2 copies here. I'm really running out, but if you would want, then I have. So it has this in detail. So if you would want, I have it.
We'll be back again.
It's $10 a copy. No, I don't think so. No,
What time they starting? They already started.
right now. So we should go.